Such an emphasis has been put on the performance of Georgia's wide receivers and kind of in conjunction with Carson Beck and how the quarterback performed last year. I think that the emphasis from the Georgia fan base, the optics of it has been that was the worst part. And while I think that obviously needs to improve in a very big way if Georgia wants to compete at a higher level in 2025, it's not the only thing, right? Georgia's running game was a huge problem last year. It was off brand, right? When people say things are on brand, they mean that they are kind of the status quo, that makes sense for that. What doesn't make sense is when Georgia runs for fewer than 2,000 yards, when Georgia only runs for about 125 yards a game, when it doesn't have a single running back run for 700 yards, when it's just not a huge part of the offense. That was what you would say off-brand for the Georgia Bulldogs last season. It just didn't make a ton of sense how poorly Georgia ran the football a year ago. It didn't. And while other things need to be fixed in this Georgia Bulldogs offense if they are going to want to go beyond an SEC championship, win a second playoff game, or get to the national championship. It's got to run the football better. I talked a little bit about this with C.J. Allen at SEC Media Days, Georgia's middle linebacker, probably a Butkus Award nominee or watch list type of guy. They brought in Josh McCray. They brought in a new running back this year. Obviously, out goes Trevor Etienne. In comes Josh McCray. Now, Etienne was RB1 for Georgia last year when he was healthy. Josh McCray is probably not going to be RB1 for the Dogs this season, but he is going to add a different element to this run game. Ryan Curley from Dawg Post talking about the run game for the Georgia Bulldogs. I talked to C.J. Allen about it a little bit earlier. It's been an emphasis this offseason for the Georgia Bulldogs, and Kirby talked about it a little bit at SEC Media Days this past week. I think that when you think about this running back room, it seems like the general consensus is going to be better, and I agree with that. I think that the reason why people think it's going to be better is Nate Frazier in particular, and I don't think that people are looking necessarily beyond that, at least from everything I've seen online. I don't actually get to talk to every Georgia fan every single day, all millions and millions of you, but Nate Frazier is expected to take this huge step forward in 2025. Sophomore season, I think it's certainly possible. I think he definitely takes a step forward. He's a guy that has electric playmaking ability when things are working. He ran the ball pretty well when he was given his opportunities against Texas in the SEC Championship. Obviously did really good things against UMass and Clemson last year. Had some touchdowns throughout the year. Had a really nice touchdown against the Florida Gators a year ago. He is probably RB1 for Georgia and a guy who I think is going to get north of 15 touches. I think he's that type of player. But it's the room around it that matters a lot. When you just look at one running back, you got to have a really special running back for you to just feel, okay, this running back room is going to be great if you're relying mostly on one guy. Last year, Trevor Etienne was the guy that they were going to rely on. Well, some games he just didn't play that well, right? Like against Alabama. He didn't play in that opening game against Clemson. And then he was hurt and didn't really play in November. So you only saw him sporadically. You saw him have two really good performances against Texas, and that was kind of the extent of the mark that he left on his one-year Georgia career. But when Etienne wasn't around, when he wasn't playing, there were still issues. You were relying on Nate Frazier, a true freshman running back who had some ball handling issues. You had Cash Jones. But then after that, they just had injuries and true freshmen that they just didn't want to rely on. So when I look at this season, why do you actually feel better about it? Well, you feel better because Nate Frazier, you think is going to take a step forward. But knock on wood, if Georgia's running back room is healthier, what you feel better about is the depth and the options that you have and the fact that they brought in a transfer portal player in Josh McCray. C.J. Allen told me, yes, he is a very, very big player, but he can move, and he's faster than you think he is. This is a guy who had over 600 yards last year, 10 touchdowns in the Big Ten, was the MVP of their bowl game for Illinois. He's a guy that can make an impact. So You look behind Nate Frazier. So if Nate Frazier's your RB1, well, what do you have behind him? You've got a thumper, I would say, in Josh McCray, an experienced one, a senior who's showed us he could play at a high level in a different conference. You've got Cash Jones. You bring back that experience, someone that's been in the system for a long time, someone that is their best pass catcher as a receiver. So you've got that. That's obviously, that part's not different from last year. If you have the health of Roderick Robinson, then you've got another bowling ball type of running back. So let's say Roderick Robinson's healthy, which it looks like it based off the things I've seen on social media and the verbiage from this football program. So you've got another body that you could trust and has been in the program for now what will be his third year. A guy who showed flashes as a true freshman, but then as a sophomore last year just didn't really play. So you've got two big power backs now behind Nate Frazier. Then you got Chauncey Bowens, who was a true freshman last year, will be a sophomore this season. A guy that I thought showed out at G-Day. I thought he made some plays. This guy's dropping people with jukes. He's hurdling people. He's stiff-arming. Kind of a do-it-all type of running back. Had a nice catch out of the backfield. Chauncey Bowens is a guy who got a handful of touches last year. I think he will have maybe a bigger role this year if they rotate those running backs. They've got Dwight Phillips Jr., who's now in year 2, right? Georgia usually doesn't want to trust true freshmen. Well, now these guys are in year 2. They're not the newest people on the football team. Dwight Phillips Jr. is, we talked about X factors earlier this week. Dwight Phillips Jr. is an X factor type of football player who's got speed, and it's just a guy you got to get the ball in his hands. And then they've got true freshman Bo Walker, who they brought in, and who some people believe to be the most impressive running back during spring practice this week. So the true difference in last year, what do you have behind your RB1? And this year is you have more depth. You've got more versatility, and if you're healthy, you got to be available. But I don't think that injuries hurt a position group more than it hurt the running backs last season. I thought that was one of the biggest issues for the Georgia Bulldogs in 2025 was just the injury problems that they had. Kirby is excited about the running game. He's talked about how this summer, how he's excited about where his running backs were. They knew it was a problem. This was no mystery to the staff. They brought in coaches to help with the running game. At the beginning of the spring, Kirby straight up told us, the biggest emphasis right now for the Georgia Bulldogs, this is Kirby talking back in March, is stopping the run and running the football. It's the run game. It was one of the biggest focuses for Georgia this offseason. This is a program that people like to call RBU. What is RBU? It's Running Back University. They did not display that last season. Like I said, it was off-brand for the Georgia Bulldogs how poorly they ran the football. They want to get back to that. Think about the 2017 offense, the 2017 Georgia Bulldogs team. They made the national championship. They almost won the national championship. What was that offense built on? It was built off of the backs of Nick Chubb and Sony Michel. They ran the ball at will. 2021, they obviously had some great weapons in the passing game. Stetson Bennett got better and better. But they had James Cook and Zamir White and Kendall Milton and Kenny McIntosh. They had all of these options at running back that just were big-time playmakers. The playmakers have kind of slowly gotten worse over the years, but even the duo of Kendall Milton and Dejan Edwards was a very productive one that ran the ball really well. The offensive line will be a factor in this. It will have to be a unit that plays better than it did a year ago. But, man, when you just look at it, it's the depth and the health are the first two factors. But the fact that they've got a versatility in the types of weapons that they have in the running back room, I think bodes well for it being better in 2025. All of the signs point towards it being better. The verbiage from the program, just the optics of it on paper. If Georgia doesn't run the football better, don't expect them to compete any further than they did last season. That's a take that I'm going to continue to have this offseason, and I appreciate you watching. Links are down below in the description of this video. Thank you.